Welcome to the Idea Climbing Podcast. Today, I'm discussing how to build and scale a business you love with my guest, Mary Kelly. Mary is a Hall of Fame speaker who started working in the family sales business when she was just 10 years old. A former Navy intelligence officer, Mary spent most of her active duty time in Asia. We dive into topics such as the benefits of asking her advice and how to go about it the right way, the four components of a great value proposition and how to create one, how to not just maintain, but scale success once you've reached it, and more golden nuggets of advice. You're going to love this show. Welcome again to the Idea Climbing Podcast. Thank you for being here, Mary. I really appreciate you making the time.
Mark, this is a great day for business people to think about how they're going to build, plan, and implement business strategies.
Well, we're going to get into some strategies. Before we do that, as far as building and implementing the business you love, how did you discover it? How did you do it? What's your story?
I started working on my dad's business, working trade shows when I was about 7 years old. At 10, my parents would leave me alone in a trade show booth to write orders while they went around and did what they needed to do. So I've been part of a business since I was very small. I took a small hiatus for about 25 years. I joined the Navy. I got to be in Asia for about 17 years of that. Got to lead teams, multicultural, multilingual, all over Asia for about 17 years. And in that time, I learned how to manage people and assets and supply chains.
What
And
was one
then
of
I
the biggest
started,
lessons you
yes.
learned?
Oh my goodness, you have to pay attention to your numbers. Number one, always, always, always pay attention to your numbers. Number two, your people really are your most important asset. And you have to make sure that people show up every day with the intent to serve you and the mission and vision you've got in mind too. And then the third thing is when you see a disruption, there's almost always more to it than what you think. So dig a little bit deeper than you want to. Don't just look at the surface problem and go, oh, okay, we've solved that. We put a band-aid on it, everything's fine. No. What I found was there's almost always a far more endemic problem.
So what was the transition like? I got too excited and asked the question too quickly. What was the transition post Navy to what you're doing now?
When I was in my last tour in the Navy, I taught at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. And the great thing about that was the admiral at the time, the superintendent, was always being called to come and do talks, come and do speeches, come and do things. People want to hear about the status of the Navy. They want to hear about leadership. They wanted to hear about something. Well, the admiral was busy. And my friend was the public affairs officer. And she used to call me and go, Mary, the admiral can't do this one. Can you do this one? Can you go in and do this, the Marriott Corporation or the FBI or this pizza chain? And I'm like, okay. And I didn't think too hard about it, Mark. I didn't. Because I had a day job. I had my normal Navy job. And it was not just a day job as most Navy jobs are. So I would just rebraid my hair and slap on some lipstick and I'm in my uniform and I would go off and do these talks. And then at one of these talks, somebody said, we can't pay you because you're in uniform, but boy, we'd really like it if you could come back and train our people when you retire. And I thought, well, that sounds kind of fun. And I'd had, like I say, a couple of business involvement before I joined the Navy, and the premises of what you're managing doesn't really change. It doesn't matter if it's Navy people or business people. Managing and leading people is still managing and leading people. And this is where I think a lot of people get hung up on, well, how do we lead Gen Z, or how do we lead millennials, or how do we lead boomers when they're older than us? And what I say, regardless of the demographic, is people need great leadership. You lead individuals, you don't lead demographics. So lead the people and the rest will follow suit. So that was kind of a long answer to a short question.
Well, how did you learn how to lead yourself to begin with? To be a leader, how did you get that self-awareness to be able to go out and lead people?
The great thing about the military is we give you leadership and responsibilities very, very early on. I graduated from the Naval Academy when I was 21 years old, and I had people working for me 9 months later. And you got to figure it out. And you make mistakes. That's what's great about the military is they know you're 21, 22 years old. You're going to screw up. You're going to make mistakes. The whole point is learn from it and move on. What I learned right away was, again, address the problems right away. Problems do not get better when you ignore them or sit on them or magically hope they go away. That's not how those work.
Mm.
And number two, pay attention to things like monthly reports. In business, we call it our profit and loss statements. But in the Navy, I had a budget. People don't understand that we don't just have this big open checkbook in the military. You have a budget and you have to pay attention to it. And if something looks wrong, it's probably wrong. And you got to then dig deeper for what's going on. And in the leadership world, I view leadership as going to the gym. When I was in my 20s, Mark, I used to go to the gym to get stronger and faster and better. And now that I'm way past my 20s, by a few decades, I go to the gym to not get worse. So I think part of leadership is not accepting our own status quo of what got us here was pretty good. Now we can just sort of coast. It doesn't work that way. And the great thing about it is when you are faced with people looking at you every single day going, okay, ensign, okay, lieutenant, okay, commander, what do we do? You got to have some kind of answers. And if you give an answer and then you try that answer and it's wrong, you got to go back and go, okay, so I made the wrong choice and we're going to do this. It teaches you to accept responsibility and then apologize and change as the situation changes or as you get more information. And this is where I think a lot of leaders, they're worried about making a mistake or they're worried about going in the wrong direction. So they do nothing. They just stagnate, or they say, well, we made that decision a year ago. It's probably still a good decision. And they don't constantly reevaluate the market conditions, for a better word, or the situation. In a wartime scenario, you've got to always be looking at what's the situation today and how does it change since yesterday and what's going to change tomorrow. And you have to do the same thing in business.
So in business, where if someone's watching or listening on either they're going to start a business or they're, a solopreneur, maybe a co-founder, but they're still in the early stages, how do you start to consciously build a business and do it effectively?
First, you have to figure out your vision and your mission. What do you do? And then why are you better at it than somebody else? You can be competitively better, like you're just better, or you can be comparatively better. You're at a lower price point, or you're more convenient, or you're more something. So you can be absolutely better, but you don't have to be. You can just be better in one area. So competitively or comparatively, where are you better? And then around that, build your value proposition. I want to be the premier eye institute for the state of Texas in 5 years. You build out your mission, you figure out where you want to go. And then from there, you create the action steps to get you there. And then when you craft the action steps, and this is where I think a lot of people get stuck, you have to first off say, what's going to be the biggest obstacle that's going to get in my way? And sometimes it's your own friends and family. Your friends and family are going to go, no, you can't start that business. You're terrible at this. I remember when you were 5 years old, and remember you did this. Those are not the people to listen to. You have to figure out the obstacles, whatever it is. I want to go back and finish my MBA. All right, the obstacles might be, I don't have time, I don't have money, I'm not sure where to go, I'm not sure who's going to take my resume. You have to figure out what the obstacles are. Because once you have those obstacles, then you brainstorm on the solutions. Mm-hmm. And if you don't give your brain a place to go with the solutions, it's going to focus on the obstacles and you're going to stop. You're going to say, well, I don't have time. And your brain goes, okay, you don't have time. So then your brain doesn't come up with solutions. But you say, okay, where am I going to find the time? How am I going to find the money? What other resources am I going to need in order to do this? Then your brain hangs on the solutions, and that is a very different place to be.
You mentioned it a couple of times. What makes a good value proposition? Because there's so many out there that seem meaningless or they just fall short or fall on deaf ears. What makes a good one?
I like a value proposition that clearly identifies what it is you do and how you are better than other people, period. And I have 4 areas that I look at. First off, your people side. Do you have the right people in place to get the job done? Number 2, do you have the right tools and technology to get the job done? You might be great at laying concrete, but if you've got old rebar or your concrete is an old combination and it's not going to last, then that's a problem. That's a technology and tools issue. And then 3, you have to manage the uncertainty, which is client customer management. With everything going on in the world today, many people feel uncertain. So you can be simply better by being a great communicator with your clients and customers and manage their worries and uncertainty. And then number 4 of a great value proposition is growth. How am I going to help you, my client, my customer, in a way that works for you, not in a way that works for me? It has to be focused. It has to be very customer centric. So the people, the tools, the technology, managing the uncertainty, and then helping others with where they want to go, to me makes a great value proposition.
What are a few ways to manage clients and customers? That's an interesting turn of phrase.
So most clients and customers, so think about in about a short amount of time, I get to go talk to some real estate folks. And one of the biggest complaints people have with their real estate agents is they don't hear from them often enough. And my real estate agents say, I'm calling them every single day. Why is that not enough? I'm like, hang on. So we've got a disconnect where the buyers or the sellers of that property, this is the biggest financial deal of their life. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty around this big financial deal. So your job as the agent is to manage that uncertainty. If they need phone calls 10 times a day, that's what you do. Even if all you're doing, Mark, what I call it is pat, head, hold, paw, just like my dog. Sometimes when there's a storm coming or there's uncertainty, the dog looks to me to tell him it's going to be okay. Mommy's here, pat, head, hold, paw. Now, I'm not saying that in a condescending way. I am saying that as the expert in the field, whether or not you're a real estate agent or an insurance agent or you sell cars or whatever you do, your job is to manage the uncertainty with your clients and customers. And that means communicating with them as often as they need, could be 10 times a day, in ways that work for them. If they don't like text, you call. If they don't like calls, you email. If they don't like emails, send a carrier pigeon, whatever works. Yeah. But help them be confident that you are the expert, you are the right choice, and you're going to guide them through this process, whatever that is. It could be buying a home, it could be brain surgery. Your job is to reassure your customers.
So once you get a client base and a general business base, if you will, how do you scale? What's your advice for actually scaling it once you have a foundation built to get a house on top of the foundation?
Exactly. First, as business owners, business entrepreneurs, business founders, one of the key things I suggest people do is make a list of all the things you do that can be delegated to other people. And you don't even have to have staff to do this in the beginning. You can go on Fiverr or Upwork or Nextdoor, and you can find people to help you with your business. Because if you've got a very specific skill set and you are trying to do everything in your business, that's a recipe for disaster. And I will share with you, I made this mistake early on. I know how to build websites, and I thought I should build my own website. I'm not an expert at it, but I know how. I learned. That was a terrible idea. So one Saturday afternoon, I am trying to figure out how to get one PDF loaded onto my website. And 3 hours later, I am failing miserably at doing this. And I sent a note to my amazing assistant who I've had since day one. And I said, I think you're probably better at this than I am. And no hurry. It's a Saturday afternoon. Please don't look at this till Monday. But I've spent 3 hours on this and I cannot make this work. I said, so if you've got any ideas, I'd appreciate it. Thanks very much. I sign off. I think I went and got a soda, came back about 5 seconds later. She sends a note back and she goes, oh, you mean like this, Mary? And it was perfect. And I have to tell you, Mark, at that moment, I thought, okay, you've been preaching it. You need to be delegating more. You need to be asking for help and paying people to do this. And you've got to be delegating things that other people can do, oftentimes because they're better than you, but also because it frees you up to do the things only you can do. And my rule is hire the best people you possibly can. I subscribe to the theory of efficiency wages, which is hire the best people you can, pay them as much as you can, and they will do the rest for you. They will give you 110%. Show them appreciation, treat them well, all those things that you learn in the military about how to really take care of your people, and then do that. My biggest failure now is I've got such an amazingly competent team that I sometimes forget that they still need communication from me, that they still can't read my mind after, a decade or two of working with me. I sometimes get complacent too.
So what would you say to someone who's not comfortable delegating? I mean, I've run into it. It's come up in conversation with friends. It's like, well, if I can just do it, how do you get comfortable and then good at delegating?
One of the questions I like to ask people is, do you want to build a business or build a life? And I, like every other entrepreneur, I routinely work, 70, 80 hours a week. This to me is really normal. This is what we did in the military when I was in. It's really normal to me. But you can't have both. So you can, you can build a life around your business. You can build a business around your life. You kind of got to figure out which one that is. And if you want to have more lifetime, then you need to be focusing on delegation. And a lot of times, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. It's like having kids. Just because you can have children doesn't mean you should have children. There's certain things that you should not necessarily do just because you can. And then in the beginning, as entrepreneurs, especially if you're starting out, of course, you want to do as many things as possible. You're trying to save money, you're trying to get everything done, you've got that control thing going on. But as you grow, you have to let go more because you cannot scale if you're still doing everything. And you need your brain power to go think of the next big thing, the next big customer, the next big proposal, the next big offering. And if you're so tied up in doing the minutia, your brain is not going to be going there. It's going to be thinking about the next little bitty tiny thing so we can cross it off our list.
Well, once you start building, you delegate, things are moving along, you hit a certain plateau. How do you maintain or even grow success once you've hit a certain level? I'm happy financially. I've got at least a small team around me. How do you keep from being just a blip on the radar? I'm like, boom, crash, up, down. How do you maintain success?
Consistency in marketing, consistency in messaging, consistency in everything that you are managing. And I think I showed you, and your listeners all get this. I put together my 12-month business success and accountability plan. And I did it for some of my senior level execs who I was meeting with them every single week. And I would ask them similar questions every single week. What do you want to talk through? What's still on your mind? What's going on? But at the very beginning of every month, Mark, I would ask these senior people, what are your top 5 goals for the month? And they would say, I don't even know what my top 5 goals are for the year. Okay, you've got 350 people following you, and you don't even know what your goals are, much less how they're supposed to support you. Let's maybe think about that. So I think I've shared with you in the past. So what I do is every month, I map out what my top 5 goals are for the month. And then not for the year. This is just the month. So for example, in January, I did not write down, put that, negotiate world peace. I didn't do that. You got to leave something for June. You got to take it slowly. But my top 5 goals for the month. And then that's that 30-day period, not in 3 months, that month. What do I need to accomplish that month? And then what do I want to do more of? And that's one of the biggest questions I ask my senior folks and my business owners. What do you want to do more of? Is it more content creation? Is it more product development? Do you want to spend more time with your high value customers? What do you want to do more of? What speaks to your skill set? And at the same token, what do you want to do less of? And look at that every single month. And then this month, and I just have 2 lines in the planning guide for this. What are you going to delegate or outsource? And it can be anything. It can be your new business card. It can be your new product design. It can be your new logo. It can be anything. But what are you going to delegate or outsource so that you are freed up from that particular task? And then what are you going to streamline? And when I tell people streamline things, how do we make it easy for people to get hold of us and do business with us? Do we have systems in place that are not cumbersome so that if people want to talk to us, they hop on a call? If people have a question, we make it easy for them to contact us. If you looked at a lot of websites lately, you'd be amazed at how many websites have 0 contact information, no phone number, no address, no email. So if somebody's got an issue, maybe they've got a big issue, maybe they've got a small issue. I know that for some organizations, they say, well, we just don't want to be bothered with our customers. Okay, hang on. The whole reason you exist is for your customers. And you're saying you want to make it hard for them to get hold of you because you don't want to be inconvenienced by a conversation. Okay. And then I ask people, what do you want to complete this month? Is there a project you want to complete? Was there, maybe you just want to clean out your desk. Maybe you just, whatever it is. And then what am I going to resolve? There's almost always something to resolve. There's old emails you need to answer. There's that one client that you just didn't click with, and you just like to put it to bed in a nice way and say, you know what, I think we're done, but I just want to double check and make sure. And then the other thing I ask my business owners to keep current is, who are you going to contact? 3 people every month. Who are you going to contact for advice? Now, sometimes that can be, hey, I'm going to listen to Mark's podcast and maybe I'm going to give Mark a call. Maybe he's got some other ideas that I really need. Or maybe it's another business associate in my industry, or maybe it's somebody in my hometown. But every month, that's my way of sort of making sure you're continuing to stay ahead. Call a client and say, and ask them, how are things going for you? What do you see changing? But contact 3 people every month for advice. And that's always an amazing thing at the end of the month. My senior people, that's the hardest one. I say, did you make your calls? They're like, no. Why not? Oh, I got busy. Okay. So then you say, all right, ask them for 3 to 5 minutes. That's it. And then don't go over that 5 minutes. Say, can I get 3 to 5 minutes of your time? I just want to ask you about this one thing. So first off, there's a theory that goes along with this psychologically, that if you ask people for advice or if you ask them for a favor, they now want to do more things for you. And what you're doing is you're engendering your network, you're engendering your client base. And then reach out to 3 potential, these are 3 different people, decision makers or potential clients. Something like, hi, my friend Mark thought it might be good for us to just have a quick conversation. He said, you really like the podcast. I want to make sure you got the 12-month planner with no issues. Just something, reach out and those are give conversations. It's always about give, 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 give. And if people like what you're talking about and they like you, if you're the BLT sandwich, if you're the people they believe, like, and trust, they want to do business with you. But that consistency every single month, to me, is key.
And it sounds like it's key to, you're saying, actually write it down, not just, oh, I have 3 goals in my head. Would you say writing it down is paramount? Oh, there you go.
Absolutely. Writing it down is critical. And I know some people are listening to this. I'm showing Mark my planner where you write it down. And for my people who love things neat, I love the OCD people in my life because they're the ones who said, Mary, this has to be something I can download, fill in, type it out all nice and neatly, then print it, then hit the check marks. It satisfies all those happy things in my brain. So this is a downloadable, fillable document that you get to keep then, and you can look back on it and say, okay, I didn't do that one goal from March, and it's now what month? Maybe I should go look at that again. It has to be written down, and preferably in your own handwriting, and I'll tell you why. When you write something in your own handwriting, it triggers a memory in your brain like nothing else does. We know that, for example, students who take notes in a classroom by typing retain not even half of what people who are handwriting things retain. And then when they look back at their handwritten notes, because your handwriting is, you're doing it in the margins and you're scribbling and you're making all these things, your brain is triggered into remembering what you were thinking at that time. It's very interesting. But yeah, write it down.
That's awesome. And we've covered a lot of ground in a short period of time, as far as whether it's reinforcing something you said or maybe something we haven't touched on yet. When it comes to building and implementing your dream business, a business you love, you were to say, at least do this one thing, at least this above all, what advice would you have for people for that one thing to be?
I would make sure you have a business plan, not in your head, because that doesn't exist, on paper. And in the resources that I share with your audience, there's a 5-minute business plan. It takes 5 minutes. If you're super clear on what you're doing, it takes 5 minutes. If you're not so super clear, it might take a little bit longer, but it's 1 page long, 1 page. And that, just as you get into the office in the morning, if you're not sure of what you're supposed to do to grow your business, you look at your plan and then you think, what behaviors, what actions, what do I need to do to support my plan today? And that will guide your future.
That is awesome. If people want to find you online, where's the best place or places to go?
My website is productiveleaders.com, because who wants an unproductive leader? Productiveleaders.com. And it's Mary at Productive Leaders. And this is one thing I don't delegate. I do not delegate my email. So it will be me answering.
Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, Mary.
Thanks, Mark. It's a joy to be with you. Thank you.
And scene.